Ladies and gentlemen, we are back after our long break. It's not the Sprint Series anymore, it is the Octane Online Racing Simrigs Sprint Series. Hello everybody, my name is Nick Amon, and alongside me, of course, none other than the always talented, always amazing Simon Bauer. Simon, how are you doing?
Pretty good, thank you very much. It's good to be back, and it's good to receive such a not necessarily true, but flattering introduction. But
Well,
hell yeah, it's good to be back, and it's especially good to be back starting the season with such a wild track.
I know Oulton Park always has some, some fun little twists and turns, and it produces exciting racing, especially towards some of these very slow, tight corners.
Yeah, it's a unique track. It's a track that's not all that commonly seen in ACC. And it's, well, you basically have to be British, pretty much, to have heard of this track before it came to ACC. At least that's the case for me.
That's true.
And since I've definitely made the acquaintance of Oulton Park, and, well, I'm not sure if I have the best relationship with it, but it's certainly a memorable one.
As long as you've got memories from it. But yeah, no, it's good to be back. We have a lot of new faces here this season, a lot of returning faces actually. One of them being last season's champion, Felgen, who has stuck with Ferrari. Now I will just apologize really quickly. I do not have some of these liveries because I did not grab them before, so hopefully by next stream we'll get that sorted out. But Felgen's back in the Ferrari to defend his crown. In fact, the top 5 drivers from last season have made a return. So Felgen, Vining, Hazel, Skyen, and Hearn are back, and then most of the drivers from season 10 actually have made their return. But we've got a pretty solid schedule this season. We have Oulton Park, of course, and then it's off to Spa, then Coda, Monza, Silverstone, Nürburgring, and Kaya Lamy. So Coda and Kaya being carried over from next season, and well, some of these new tracks that are being added into the calendar. What are your thoughts? I mean, Oulton Park, Spa, Monza, Silverstone, Nürb. I mean, I think they're pretty solid tracks.
It's a pretty good variation, I gotta say, especially having stuff like Oulton Park and Silverstone in there, because those two tracks, while they're both British, they are basically complete polar opposites. Silverstone is big, huge, and wide. Oulton Park certainly isn't. Silverstone is flat as hell. Oulton Park, you're not only going up and down over the course of the track itself has little mountains built into it, which you might call bumps, but I would call them added elevation. But it's good. It's good to have such a nice variety of even the smallest and weirdest and most niche tracks, and then always, of course, the biggest F1 tracks.
Yeah, always exciting to see, and hopefully these drivers have been practicing. You got the whole Sprint Series, you got the whole season, you got a whole month to get everything sorted out. So the second that schedule gets announced, I mean, you get right out there and start practicing. And it looks like Chris Vining is actually doing a pretty good job. He's put in a lot of practice. Has just done a 32.9. So the first driver we've actually seen into the 32s, and he is in the Honda this season. So definitely one of the cars to look out for, as it's currently rather strong.
Right, Chris Vining is back. He was next to Felgen, of course. Probably the other big championship contender, and those two were duking it out quite a few times. Chris Vining is back to attempt to steal that crown off of Felgen in a new car. Felgen has stuck with a Ferrari, seemed to suit him pretty well. Now Vining, I've raced with him in the past, and I've certainly noticed he loves to switch up his cars. And in the Honda, it's really exciting to see him in that car. It's a very strong car. It's one of the most competitive cars on the grid right now, but it's also one of the trickiest to drive. So I think we're gonna have to watch out for some very high moments for him, and maybe also some low moments if the Honda does come back to bite him.
Yeah, I've made the switch from McLaren to Honda, so I've definitely been feeling the wrath of it. But to bounce off of Felgen, you talked about him and Vining duking it out, but when you look at the stats, I mean, Felgen, 5 wins, 6 podiums, and 7 top 10s. I mean, that's an absolutely dominating performance, and it looks like he's having a P3 start right now, but he's still very, very close to that P1, so I don't think we should really be counting him out just yet. We are getting to the end of qualifying. We had some little bit of server issues, so we were a bit, we didn't have any free practice time. We just sort of jumped into quali, so hopefully that's okay with everybody. But for right now, it is Vining on pole, almost 7 tenths up from Mullard, who is, I mean, that is an insane gap.
That is a hell of a statement to start the season off with, I gotta say.
Yep, if you're going to come out of the gates, you might as well come out swinging. But we're getting drivers across the line. Vinogradov currently P7 for him. Daniel Hearn is just aborting a lap now. Fredrickson is sitting in P9. He is very highly seated for an amateur class driver, considering Zenaker is all the way down in P15. So I'm not going to say it's a promotion just yet, but to be honest, I would not be surprised.
Yeah, you could say it is 1.4 seconds off pole.
No,
but
it's
then
not.
It
it's
is less.
I think somebody messed
my
up.
words.
Someone messed up the rating.
Well, but here we go. I mean, it's good to see so many new faces in the top 10 already. We have, well, Mullard is up there, but Mullard, we've seen him before. Fredrickson, definitely new face in the championship and already up there in P4, despite somehow being in AM. We'll see if that changes over the course of the season. Down to P6, we have Hudson, and Tully has just managed to get into P7, where Dambrauskis used to be just a second ago, now in P8. Vinogradov has joined us, I think, halfway through the last season, so we've seen his face before, and then down to Hearn in P10.
Yeah,
but here we go. We're lined up. It's looking quite cloudy, huh?
Yeah.
But optimum track. No rain in sight just yet, but might look a bit concerning for the drivers.
Yep. But an hour on the clock, and not only that, we got not one, but two mandatory stops for this first race. So we've done the one stop, of course, but we're gonna change it up a little bit as we take a little stroll through the grid. Some cars all decked out, some of them not, because the broadcaster forgot to do his job. But I mean, some of these liveries, even just on their own, look really, really good.
Absolutely. And speaking of looking really good, it's beautiful to see as the safety car on the grid again.
Yes.
Well, technically P27. We have the old Camaro as the safety car with a nice red, white, and black livery, pretty standard, but fitting very well. And I'm looking forward to seeing or hearing that thing rumble around the track as it takes the drivers around the opening lap.
Well, I'm sure it will once we get the countdown going. And really, really quick, of course, we just like to take a moment and thank our sponsors, Simrigs. If you're looking to upgrade your gear, whether it be pedals or steering wheels, gloves, or everything in between, Simrigs has got you covered. And if you are a Patreon, you do get 5% off in store. So go to simrigs.com. It'll get you covered and, well, maybe give you some extra tenths out there on track. But another minute to go, and we'll get back racing, get this season 11 started. It feels like it's been forever. Thankfully, I've been doing some other broadcast stuff outside of the PC world, so I've been able to keep myself at least a little bit up to date on top of what I normally do on my own live streams.
That's good to hear. So you're at least warmed up. I'm starting off exactly where we left off last time, so I haven't done any proper commentary in between. So let's see if that's noticeable. Just tuned in, Josh. Where did Felgen qualify? Felgen qualified in P3, so not a bad position at all, but actually surprisingly far off pole in terms of pace. I think, what was it at the end? 7-8 tenths?
About little more than
P1 and P3.
I think a little under 7 tenths.
Okay, a little under 7 tenths. So that is a statement. That is, I think, just about 6 tenths between P1 and P2, between Vining and Mullard. So this could be a dominant performance from Vining if he can keep it together. Let's see how this goes for him. But Here we go. 5 seconds to go before, well, the engines are already turning on, but before the car controls are unlocked, the braking lines turn off. Few people are waiting or can't wait for the safety car to go past. But here we go, safety car on front, and now the rest can follow.
I think I'm right there with them. I couldn't wait for that safety car to get moving. Good old GT4 Camaro, ready to see. Hopefully, I think Kunos may have teased some DLC earlier on in the month. Could be wrong, but ready to see whatever they've got, and I'm ready to see what these drivers got in store. We have 26 drivers here this evening, and on a rather tight circuit, I would not be surprised if we saw some door bang and some paint trading.
It's a tight circuit. It's a bumpy circuit, so be prepared for anything. I don't think we're gonna have a boring job tonight.
No, definitely not. And with the two-stop strategy, you know, you got a lot to play with, a lot of possible routes to move around with, and you know, these drivers are used to one stop, so why not throw a little bit of a wrench in the works?
Well, and we'll see what the weather does for us. It is looking very cloudy, completely overcast, no sun up there in the sky to see for us. But wind right now is 0 kilometers an hour, and usually wind can be a good indicator of rain showing up if the wind starts getting heavier. But right now, no wind really. It's just a bit cloudy. It's just a bit sad to look up in the sky. But
I mean, this is England,
drivers...
so.
Oh well, that's fair enough. But well, I mean that could give us a pretty good chance of rain if it you know, does its reputation justice.
Have to wait and see. At least for the next 30 minutes, we're going to be nice and dry. Not sunny, but better than wet track at least. So we head over the crest here. Cars are lining up 2 by 2, and on the safety car, it knows what time it is as it slowly begins to pull away. Obviously, GT4, not the fastest thing in the world, but still a nice little car. So the time has come. These drivers have waited what seems like forever to get back behind the wheel. The safety car pulls away, and we are just a few seconds away from the start of the Simrigs Sprint Series Season 11 here for the European split at Oulton Park. Any last words, Simon?
Look at how close the gaps between all these cars are. They are definitely trying to be as close as possible to their competitors. So here we go.
Yep. It's Vining on pole, Mullard, Felgen, Fredrickson, Michaels, top 5, Hudson, Dambrauskas, Tully, Vinogradov, and Hearn, the next 5, and it's green, green, green here at Oulton Park. It's going to be a really good getaway for the top 2 as they go down into turn 1. Already we're seeing 3 wide in the background as there's some touching going on, and we have an Aston Martin that's gone out wide, but it looks like Mullard has actually gotten the best of Vining. He's going to have this inside line for the next turn, and the 2 leaders come together. Vining goes around, and he's getting punted like a soccer ball here in the hillsides of the UK, and there's more contact as Matty Sachs goes into the back of, I believe that was Zaneker. And already, Vining finds himself quite a ways down the grid, all the way down in the 20s. And I'm sure there's already some words being thrown all over that communications, alright?
There we go. We've got another car off the track. It's
Hudson.
I can't even get him between. There we go. Hudson, also one of our relatively high qualifiers. In the
we
Merc
got another one.
They have been.
The Honda of, I believe, Tully. We've got a Mercedes spinning off here at the chicane. It's already popping off, and I think
it looks like we've got a safety car going.
Yeah, the safety car being deployed already. What an absolutely chaotic start. We got through the first turn, and we made it a decent distance, and then, well, that happened. But
what a decision it was to open up the season with Oulton Park. Honestly, I could not imagine a more exciting or more entertaining race to watch. But, well, maybe not entertaining for some of these drivers right now. Definitely a lot of tears we're seeing from some of them, I'm sure. Let's see, Hudson is now down in last place. We can find Vining is in P21, so he has made up a few positions since his spin, but I'm seeing some damage on the back of that Honda, and damage on the back of any mid-engine car is not a good thing to see, so likely we'll be seeing him in the pits very early, so he can repair his damage and also get out of the traffic and try to, you know, put down his pace in free air. But let's see, we're coming down past the pits for the first time. See if anyone's diving in. I'm not even sure if we're allowed to pit on the safety car, but there we go. Zineka is the first coming in.
Yep, Andreas. I believe him and Lucas, they might be related, I don't know. They do carry the same surname, and we also have number 78, that's Nizelski. We got some new additions, so we got to figure out names, but yeah, also into the pits for the pole. It's got a lot of damage on the front end. Yeah, that's at least 3.5 minutes.
What has happened here? We've had a crash under the safety car. Look between Hudson and Bonfoy. I sadly didn't catch what exactly happened, but I just saw Hudson
huge.
spinning off the track, and that is some solid damage on the front of that Merc.
Let's see if we can get
There goes. That is...
replay. Oh, does he go into the back of somebody?
It looks like it.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
A lot of damage on the back of Bonfoy's Porsche as well.
Oh, that's not good.
Not sure if that was down to the front pack stacking up and not being able to react fast enough, or if, well, he forgot that cars are not ghosted under the safety car. It is, well, not a game, controlled safety car. It's completely from the OOR race director itself. So, as far as the game knows, the race is still live and collisions are still on.
Yep, and hitting the back carries a very heavy penalty. So, new drivers, they will be experiencing that, and I'm sure there's going to be some fun discussions post-race. But I
think we've got more bumps coming in. I'm now seeing some damage on the back of Sharp, on the back of Klarenberg and Ippolito.
Oh, well, yeah.
That's one way to learn to have a safety car in your first race, and then immediately have to learn or to figure out that the cars are not ghosted. What an absolutely chaotic start to this race.
I think I know why the crashing happened. I may have a theory, a game theory, if you will. Currently, for those of you that don't know, of course, we are in Discord with this. Simon and I are in a comment or a voice channel, and I live stream the game to him, and he watches in. But there is also another person who's in here who was here from the AP races. It looks like none other than Mullick. And I don't know if you're superstitious, but every time Mullick's in the booth, I think there's always some chaos to be had. So I'm not going to say it's his fault, but assuming.
Well, the boss is watching, and the drivers may not necessarily know that the boss is watching, but his presence is there.
It is.
And perhaps something is affecting the drivers there, but there we go. So the pit window is just opened. So indeed, the first two pit stops we saw on the end of the first lap, those did not count. But anyone coming into the pits now will have the pit stop counted as one of those two mandatory pit stops.
Yeah, Hudson and
Meanwhile, safety car is still staying out for one more lap. Let's see if it will come in on this lap. Meanwhile, we've got Nijielski back out of the pits, going around at some reasonable pace, trying to catch back up with the back of the field that's still under the safety car.
Yes.
And in the pits are now sitting Klarenberg and Hudson, two of those drivers that were involved in incidents under the safety car.
It has been an explosive start here to the season, and maybe we should take another quick moment here to just thank once again our sponsors, Simrigs, for this season 11 Sprint Series. If you're looking to upgrade your system with wheels or pedals, gloves, and socks, well, they've got you covered. Simrigs.com, the place to go. And if you are a Patreon member, you do get 5% off in the store. But for right now, the Simrigs safety car is the one that's quote-unquote leading the pack.
And I can tell you real quick, Felgen, last season's champion and always one of the cars or one of the drivers to watch, has not well survived those first 3 laps scot-free as well, because he does carry some decent damage on the front of his Ferrari as well, and is also down in P4 when he did start just behind Mullard in P3. So not entirely sure what happened to him, but he is slightly compromised as well now, so this could be a very open race. Currently leading is Mullard himself, looking like there's no damage at all on that Audi, so he is perfectly set for, well, a solid rest of the race. Just behind him, Vinogradov, no visible damage either. And then in P3, our AM driver, not sure how much longer he's going to be an AM driver, in P3 in his scratch-free Aston. And the safety car has just pulled away, so we are going to be seeing a restart in just a second.
Yep, drivers are out of the pits. Klarenberg did get out of there, so the safety car is now into the pit lane. And this is going to be all under the control of Ben Mullard. The green flag is given, but it's up to him to choose when to get the pedal down. And he is actually going to get it going. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, back once again with this Oulton Park race. It's already been a chaotic start, and now that we're single file and going through the first turn, it looks like everybody is going to be playing nicely. So it's Mullard ahead of Vinogradov, Fredrickson, Felgen, and Dambruskas. And then it's Hearn, Michael, Sack, Cairns, and Partez in that top 10. And it looks like with everybody having some space to work with, things are going to be sorted out quite well. Sam Perkins into the pit lane along with Chris Vining. So Vining, last season's champion, going to fall even further down the grid. Not the start he wanted, but this will count as a pit stop. So effectively, one more stop to go. How do you strategize around that?
Well, it's going to be a very open strategy for all of these drivers. There's a lot of margin. Oh, there we go, as we see an Aston going off. There's going to be a lot of margin for drivers to make errors and then, well, recover those errors somewhat through the pit stops. Speaking of errors, we've also seen on the restart lap already a big crash in turn 2 that has sent Sletner to the back now. It's just been overtaken by Hudson. But yeah, it's an hour race. We have 2 pit stops. I believe with mandatory tire changes, so those would not be necessary at all in a race without mandatory tire changes. But they do add a lot of extra strategy element and a lot of well, ways to maybe recover a little bit or limit your damage when you are involved in an incident.
And right now we've got
as everyone is.
Sorry, we have Z-Naker, we have the, I believe that's our friend Lucas right there with the beautiful overtake on Igor, so that is going to be for P20, and a little bit of very close action already from these two. Definitely not done yet, still plenty of time. We hop back up. Right now Felgen finds himself in a little bit of a battle pack here, with Vinogradov leading, and then Fredrickson, a surprising P3, and then Dambrowskis, and I'd even throw Hearn into the mix a little bit, and Michaels, why not? So from 2nd down to 7th is already starting to heat up a bit. You see Mullard up ahead pulling away, and even with that front end damage, Felgen seems to be holding on quite nicely.
Yeah, we've got a close field from P1 to P7. It's relatively close for Oulton Park standards. But then going down further towards the back, there's a few pockets of battles, but there's also already a lot of gaps between these cars that were formed at the restart. But the top 7, well, Mullard is definitely creating his own little gap there, but let's say P2 to P5, those are definitely the group that we want to have our eyes on right now.
Yep, definitely starting to maybe draft off of each other and start pulling away, and maybe even using that to sort of catch up to Mullard, because keep in mind, Mullard, despite being in the lead, does not have anybody in front of him punching a hole. So to some extent, he will be losing out, but with the skill he's got, I don't think it's going to be too much of an effort, or too much of a worry, rather, as we hop back here for Shop, Hausman, and Z-Naker for P16 right now. And the other Z-Naker brother is quite a ways behind, but right now it's Hausman who is losing out right now, has not gotten the same sort of exit that the Porsche has. And down the inside looks Z-Naker, but doesn't go for the move. The move is not there quite yet. And this battle will continue. You can see just how close he is, though.
Meanwhile, the sky is starting to light up a bit. We have some sun peeking out between the clouds, so looks like rain is getting less likely.
Yep, Andreas, sorry, with a beautiful dive down the inside. It actually opens up the door for Lucas to go through. These two doing very well, playing nicely with each other, and definitely teaming up.
There we go, 2 similar looking BMWs.
Yep, I mean, look at the team name. I mean, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but ooh, we've got one of the brothers completely missing the break point. And I don't know if that'll be a lasting advantage. We'll have to see what the call is, if any. Yeah, the 2 brothers definitely using that bloodline as a way to hit the red line of the car as a rev limiter and get around these guys.
Oh, and
hold on.
we have a crash at the front.
Oh, just caught that at the worst possible time. We are going to take a look at this. So this is Fredrickson and Felgen. So let's see what happened here.
Fredrickson goes just a little wide on the exit of turn 1 and unsettles that McLaren tries to overcorrects, and well, Felgen doesn't seem to be able to react fast enough and goes into the side of him. So very unlucky situation for both Felgen and our Aston driver.
Yeah, and you saw just right at the end, Hearn just barreling on through. Same with Dombrowski's, just barely enough room to squeak around. So we do have Barlow was the Aston Martin, it looked like, involved. So, or no, sorry, that wasn't Barlow, but the Aston Martin who was involved is currently trying to make their way back around. It may have been Fredrickson, if memory serves. But right now, ooh, we've got some very heavy damage on Hudson's car. Has not gone in yet, it looks like.
I'm sure he's gonna dive into those pits just at the end of the lap.
Or sorry,
Meanwhile,
this is not Hudson. It's Perkins. Oh my goodness, I don't even know cars anymore. Oh. All the carnage has already mixed up the field, so I can't tell if it's a back marker or someone who's racing for position. But we hop back up. Hearn now with Michaels in his rear view using that slipstream to catch back up. Has not had enough of a chance, and they're going to actually pip out the fellow Aston there coming out of the pit lanes. And speaking of pit lanes, Felgen going in.
Meanwhile, it looks like Mullard has made a little mistake, because the gap between Mullard and Vinogradov has come right down to now only half a second, as Vinogradov catches just a little bit of that inside grass at, I believe, what is it called? Island Bend, which unsettles the car a little, but he is able to stay relatively close. But as you said earlier, Mullard is out in front, doesn't have that tow from any other cars in front. At such a short track, such a curvy track without any real long straights, that tow is a very minimal advantage. So really Mullard is in the best position right now, not suffering from any dirty air, as that dirty air really hurts more than any possible slipstream could benefit you.
As you see, Zinelski is here with a huge dive bomb onto Husman, and does pick up a P15. It was a very good move from quite a ways back. Caught him completely off guard and snagged that. So already drivers making moves here and going for overtakes early on. Still 44.5 to go right now. And for a lot of these drivers, it is 2 stops. But for others, it is only 1. So, you know, when you look at the 2-stop strategy, you know, maybe you have to figure out what's your best course of action. You know, are you going to be in a position where you have 1 stop or 1 stint that's longer than the others? Do you sort of make them even? You know, what would be the ideal strat in your eyes?
From a completely objective standpoint, it's we have Cuthbert right now going off wide in turn 1, just barely able to keep the car together, not slam into the wall, but down to P10 now. But back to pit strategy. So, of course, it's not a huge... the tires are not a huge issue in a race with only 60 minutes and 2 mandatory pit stops. But you are still going to feel those tires just a little bit. So, in a vacuum, let's say, the perfect strategy would be to split the race up into 3 20-minute stints. And that's going to be the thing, or the strategy you're going to base your decisions off of. Now, if you're out in front, that's probably the best way to go. Maybe extend those stints just a little to make sure you don't accidentally end up in any traffic, as other people are maybe pitting later than you. So you want to be pitting a little after those 20-minute marks. For any cars behind, any cars that are wound up in battles and want to be getting past the car in front, you can do an undercut very easily here. And it's going to be relatively powerful and relatively easy to pull off, since you're not going to have to deal with a lot of tire wear at the end of your stints. So it's tough to figure out a single best strategy here. Of course, Oulton Park is also a track that invites chaos, and you want to plan for that chaos by maybe leaving one of your, you know, potential mandatory stops out late in case something happens, so you don't have to stop again. So if you, say, crash after your second stop and then have to do another one. So lots of different, yeah, process of thought that might lead to different strategies, but I think a lot of these strategies are going to be decided by necessity, by already having taken damage and having to pit early.
Yeah, and we do see these pit stops coming in, so some drivers opting for a little bit less than a 20-minute stint, but perhaps they're going to extend the next stint they come out on. Ippolito, Cuthbert in the pits, Parfait as well. And if you look at the fastest lap, it is Chris Vining. It is a 33:24, so he's actually done a rather stellar job of making up these positions after his lap 1 incident.
Yeah, he had the opportunity to pit early. It's not going to come back to haunt him really, since he's going to have to do another stop anyway, so he can get off those relatively old tires very soon. And we have another incident with Vining, just as we say that.
Trying to get around, I believe that was Ippolito. And yeah,
he already had the move made past Ippolito as he came out of the pits, but a little bit of. Can we see it here?
No, it was a little too far back. Looks like I think he just got a little bit too ambitious and a little too eager to get around and just sort of compromised himself. So definitely not what he wants, but he knows he has the pace compared to, well, who's ever in front. So, actually, Ippolito is, oh no, Ippolito is already long gone. Sometimes some of these corners seem to blend in, but yeah, Chris Vining does have the pace. I would not be surprised if he catches back up rather quickly.
Well, he would have to get past other cars cleanly, though, to get back, and that is something that can be very tough as a driver that has the pace to be the fastest car on track, but now has to cut through the field. Sometimes you do get a little bit over-ambitious and try to be too aggressive, knowing that you should be getting past these cars as quickly as possible to not be held up. But that incident between Vining and Ippolito, I mean, both were still had a little overlap coming into Island Bend, that's what it's called. Still had a little overlap. Vining pulling a little to the right, Ippolito pulling a little to the left. Just you know, a little conflict of interest there. Nothing really intentional, nothing that's, you know, can 100% be attributed to either of them, I would say. But that has, of course, now messed up Vining's tires after that little safari through the grass, and it has given him another little bit of rear-end damage. So he's not going to be happy, and he's going to have, well, a little bit of that work he's already done to cut through the field erased. And now the rest of the work that he has to do from now on is going to be just a little harder with those compromised tires and the compromised rear end of his car.
Absolutely. And a lot of these drivers also really feeling the hurt of just that opening lap. Sletner, one of them, as well as Ippolito. Of course, these Ippolito's already got a pit stop out of the way. Sletner still has to do it, and we do have a 10-second penalty for Fredriksson. So with the 2-stop, you know, it kind of gives you a little leeway on penalties. Obviously, you should avoid getting them, as we do have, you know, a licensed point system, and you will, you know, lose points if you're, you know, not the cleanest driver, if you get penalties. But, you know, it's one of those, well, you get it now before a pit stop, then when you go in, it just gets added on, and then you go from there. But looks like Sletner does decide that now is the time to pit, get some fresh tires on, and fix up some of that damage. Ippolito does carry on with 2 Hondas in tow, one of them Vining, and I believe the other is Tully. So the 2 Japanese manufacturers hunting down the lone German.
That's right, and now let's see how quickly Vining can get past these 2. Of course, he wants to get past as quickly as possible to be able to get back into clean air. There's a lot of clean air in front of those 2 cars, and a lot of opportunity for him to put his proper pace out on the track. But he's gotta do it cleverly. He's gotta not let, you know, his impatience take over. So, and it is definitely tricky and tough to get a clean overtake, even on a car that's significantly slower at Oulton Park. So he's going to be stuck there for quite a few laps, I believe.
Yep, and you know, we saw it just before Island Bend. He was trying to go around the outside, it looked like, and you know, just sort of lost some pace, and he was trying to go for a move on Tully, but wasn't meant to be, unfortunately. Sanchez,
Second penalty.
Oh yeah,
coming in the meantime for Seneca.
Yeah, for Lucas. So that's definitely gonna play into his hands. See how he deals with that. And again, it's Vining going wide. He is getting rather impatient. He knows he has the pace, but with just how much slower these cars are off of pace and off of damage, it is rather difficult. But with a rather good exit here, he is going to just breeze by Tully, and now he's got to get around Ippolito all over again.
Yeah, that was Tully actually lifting off a little to let Vining past. Ooh, oh god, there we go again. We have another incident between Vining and Ippolito. Let's see if you can grab the replay. There we go.
Oh, that's very, very questionable, to say the least. I think I'll leave that one to the stewarding team.
The stewards are gonna have a good look at that one. It's hard to exactly judge it from our perspective, and it's not our job either way. But no. Vining once again trying to cut through the field as quickly as possible and ending up in trouble again.
Yep, and Klarenberg right now under attack from Michaels, who does have that slipstream. Going to pull out to the side here and get the overtake done. Looks like Klarenberg actually backed out a little bit. Just said, you know what, you can have the position. I don't care. I will get you back later. And Hearn picking up a 10-second penalty as well. There
we go. That's the current overall leader, although he is, of course, still on no pit stop served just yet. One of, let's see, yeah, 2 cars that have not completed any pit stops yet. Partas right now has come in from P5 and is now serving his first pit stop, while Hearn and Cairns, P1 and 2, are still out without any pit stops. And the car that is now leading, well, the leading car that has already completed a pit stop is now Hudson, the number 22 Mercedes, in front of Mullard.
Yeah, very surprising to see, especially with how good Mullard is, but perhaps Hudson just timing it a little bit better. Just a quick sidebar. Sorry, a quick sidebar for Sanchez. I forgot to get the liveries before the stream started, so I had to do that for NA, and I have to do it again for EU. I don't remember if there was a liveries pack that was given or posted somewhere in the Discord. If there is, I definitely missed it, and if not, then, well, I'm all set. Wagner saying car 313, that is Hearn, a 10-second penalty for causing a collision on lap 1.
Right, in the meantime, I'm quickly trying to figure out what exactly has happened to put Hudson up into P1. And there we go, I can tell you exactly what's happened. He was in the pits under the safety car.
Oh.
Actually having carried some quite big damage and sitting there in the pits for a while. But you can see it. Being in the pits during the safety car while the rest of the field is slowed down dramatically can give you a really, really big advantage, even if you have damage to repair. And that's what's brought him out 10 seconds ahead of Mullard. But we'll see how quickly or how long that gap stands. Right now, last lap from Mullard was a 34.1, while the last lap from Hudson was a 34.0. So no real big pace difference between those two.
Nope, and they still struggled to
Hudson
take...
is in a very comfortable position right now.
It's Vining, though, still with that fastest lap, a 33.24, has not been able to best that, so perhaps once he gets some fresh rubber on those tires, he'll see that. The penalty that came in for Fredrickson is causing a collision on lap 1, so now he's sitting at 20 seconds already. So getting that added on to the pit stop, and then, well, at that point, you got to keep it clean for the rest of the race unless you want to get booted down. It has been just not the best afternoon, I would say, for Fredrickson.
No, not necessarily. And it's frustrating to come into the season as a new driver and immediately run into trouble. But that's, all the more motivation to get a better run in the second one.
Yep, it's a new season, new faces, and that's always the thing with new season starting up and new drivers coming in is you never know how they're going to race, and they never know how you're going to race. When you look at a lot of these names, on the field, Hearn, Hudson, or sorry, I don't think Hudson was here last season. Hearn, Mullard, Vinogradov, Sack, Partez, Vining, Felgen. These guys have all raced with each other. They know how each other are going to race. But what they don't know is how the other drivers are going to race. So, the first round or two is always sort of a rough time for everybody because you're trying to figure out what everyone's style is like and then how you play around that. So, this definitely is not the best that these drivers have to offer. Not quite yet.
And of course, as a new driver coming into a championship, you're gonna have to have a little bit of an internal struggle to deal with of trying to stay as safe as possible, trying to figure out what the drivers are going to be racing with are like, and trying to get a grip on them as quickly as possible to figure out how exactly or how hard you're going to be able to race them in the future. And of course also trying to be safe and not draw too much negative attention to yourself by causing crashes. But at the same time, coming into a new championship, you also want to immediately show everyone what you've got and immediately pop up on everyone's screens. So in some cases that's definitely worked. In case of Hudson, now leading the race, officially leading the race, as Hearn in previously P1 has pitted for his first pit stop. So Hudson now out in front. Quite a big gap still. Can't even see the gap anymore as there's so many cars between Hudson and Mullard. But yeah, the gap has gone up to now over 10 seconds. Just a few tenths, that gap has increased. And 10 seconds between two cars that are at a very similar pace. With only 30 minutes to go, I think Hudson is in a very good position to take the race win here if nothing out of the order happens.
Well, it's still 30 minutes. Anything can happen. Right now we are going to focus here. Alex McConnell in the number 30 BMW does have Fredrickson and Klarenberg behind. Now Klarenberg, his strategy has made it so that those two pit stops are already out of the way. So it's going to be a bit of a struggle later on once those tires start to fall off, even though, it's not something they really should be worrying about. And as I say it, Klarenberg getting a little too eager on exit and does spin out and lose quite a lot of time.
At the same time, Sack as well in the hairpin, going wide, hitting the wall just a little bit, taking away probably minimal damage. As at the same time, we've got another penalty coming in. Let's see, yeah, that's going up to a 10-second penalty for the number 17. That is Felgen for causing a collision.
Oof, it's already been a bit of an issue for some of these returning drivers as a shop goes into the pits. Ippolito, quite a lot of damage, has Lucas behind him right now. And with that damage definitely being a lot slower, and then behind them, of course, is McConnell and Fredrickson. So the battle for 14 and 16 starting to get a little bit dicey, although, of course, that 20-second penalty for Fredrickson puts him out for quite a while. And we actually have a yellow flag as we have the 136 car of
Oh,
that was corner. That was the Porsche we saw earlier. That wasn't Klarenberg. That is Bonifoy. So out of
like we might have a game crash or some sort of tech issue here, because we have no reaction from him at all. But fortunately, he's standing in a very safe position, and he's got going again. Let's see. He has been stood there for quite a while, so he has lost out a lot of time. Now down in last position, but looks like he is going to continue. So props for that. Very easy to run into an issue like that and immediately give up Alt F4 DNF. Yep. But looks like Bonfoy is going to keep going.
Yep, and Mullard has made it around another back marker, and as we see what the gap is as he crosses the line, how much time he's got. 12 seconds up to Mullard and still has some traffic to go through, so he's making great progress. But the problem is that he has to get close enough to Hudson to either make an overcut or an undercut work, and right now that's looking rather difficult.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, we've got a 10-second penalty once again coming in, this time for Cuthbert in the number 13. So penalties are quickly accumulating, mostly right now for our, well-known drivers.
Yep, Klarenberg.
The new drivers so far, especially Hudson, definitely coming in very strong, while the drivers that I would have expected to be the ones to watch out for, starting the race, especially Felgen and Vining, very, very tough start to the season for both of them so far.
Yeah, perhaps the allure of being a returning driver who was, top of the standings, perhaps they got a little too, I don't want to say cocky, but maybe a little bit too overzealous and caused some issues, and now they're looking like some new drivers giving new life to that top 10, maybe even top 5, as we see Hearn leading Michaels again for that P5. So I think if this is anything to go off of, I think this is going to be quite the season.
Fingers crossed, most of these drivers, if not all of them, will return for the rest of these rounds, because they are putting on a hell of a show for us. And I think that is going to be one of the main reasons for the trouble our last season's championship contenders and champion himself have run into. It's a bigger grid. It's definitely a much bigger grid. It's new names. It's a very new track and a very tricky track. So maybe a little too confident coming into this track. Maybe a little too little practice. Who knows? But
well,
it's definitely showing that between two seasons, even if they still have got their pace, things can start off very differently.
Absolutely, and even when you're, up front, you're on pole, you get a little, see Haker there, Andreas getting a little bit close there to Shop. But yeah, when you're on pole, you get really confident, and maybe you just lose focus for a split second, and you sort of have an incident like we saw. And right now, a Shop with a beautiful dive, or sorry, not Shop, it's Zenaker with a huge dive down the inside, and does pick up P22 from Shop, who is remaining in the picture. But right now, with that BMW, and a lot of clean air, would not be too surprised if he pulled away. And Vining out of
We've
the
got
pits.
a lot of big gaps all around the track. Right, Vining just come out of the pits for his final stop, so now he has to go for a flawless 25 minutes to end off this race.
Oh, we got
Meanwhile, Ippolito going off at Island Bend. I've specifically learned the name of that corner because that is the corner I was expecting to show up a lot, and it absolutely has so far.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a very tight turn. It is cambered, but some people see that and they think they can take it a lot faster. So definitely one that can catch you out if you're not respectful of it. We did see Ippolito was having to give way to faster cars, and on the outside line, on the dirty line with damaged Mercedes, definitely not the easiest thing to do. So you did see him run wide, and thankfully was able to keep it pointed in the right direction, but definitely losing a lot of time with that. And Hudson remains on top, and Mullard is still quite a ways back. So with 23 and a half or so minutes to go, still a lot of pit stops that need to come through, and 18 and a half minutes is that pit window going to be open. So if you don't get in there now, or within the next 18 and a half minutes, well, you're going to cop a bit of a penalty, and Cuthbert is going to go into the pit lane to serve that last pit stop and that, hopefully, that last penalty.
Something big has just occurred to spice up the race lead once again. Hudson in P1 has received a 5-second penalty for causing a collision. Now, the gap between Hudson and Mullard is...
It's actually 15 seconds.
How much that exactly is? 15 seconds, so it has opened up a lot more.
Oh,
this
so
has been something that happens.
That was the
Now it's around...
the collision behind the safety car. I believe that was the car we saw earlier on that got involved. So that is gonna be huge. I mean, the gap to Mullard is quite extravagant, but you know, you have to take into account that 15 seconds is added on to the pit stop. So if the pit stop was going to be the standard 30 seconds, well, now it's 45 seconds. Could that be enough for Mullard to, you know, do a bit of an, you know, just stay out another lap and then go in and maintain the lead as he comes out?
Yeah, the penalty is only just increased from 5 to 15 seconds. So now, penalties all added up. Mullard is back in the lead. 12 seconds right now, a little over 12 seconds, I believe, behind Hudson, so things are absolutely not done and dusted. I think it would probably be best for Muller to stay out right now, just for a little bit more, because he has pretty clean air. He's basically on his own. He has a few blue flaggers in front of him that he might have to overtake soon, but as long as those are respectful, then he shouldn't be losing out to them too much. But right now, just make sure to maximize his pace. Same goes for Hudson. And I think once both pit stops are done, depending on how well both of them manage to put in their laps before the pit stops and how well both of them manage to execute their pit stops themselves, might have a relatively close fight again for the lead between Mullard and Hudson. But this time, Mullard's gonna be in the front, probably.
Yep, we've got, we just saw Felgen there coming out of the pit lane. We have Lucas Seanaker, we've got Ippolito into the pits. We have, a huge dive bomb, actually, cutting me short there, was Parfait, and it looked like cooked it a little too long in the oven and had to back out. But definitely a very ambitious move, to say the least. Tully into the pits as well. So these last few pit stops coming through, Hudson is getting towards the tail end of his lap. So we'll see if he decides to go into the pits, because the sooner or the longer he puts off this pit stop, maybe the more damaging it's going to be into the end. And there it is, does go into the pits. So now we look back to Mullard. He's going to see this. The question is, does he stay out or does he go in?
If he does go in right now, then he will likely come out in front of Hudson.
No, he's staying.
All right. As long as he doesn't mess up any of his laps drastically, then he will still likely be in front of Hudson once he does pit. And being in front of him at a track like Oulton Park is going to be a big advantage in the first place, seeing as it's so difficult to overtake here.
Yep, but he's still got to get through the lap.
Absolutely, and he definitely does have to make sure that he doesn't lose too much time right now, or pace right now, on these slightly older tires. As Hudson will come out with... Oh, and we have a big off from Dambrauskis in P3 right now. Manages to save it, keep it out of the wall, rejoin the track. There we go. It's once again, it's Island Bend striking.
Oof.
Once you go wide there is little to save you.
Yep, thankfully.
There's a good chance you're going into that wall, and if you don't go into that wall, you're going to be losing a lot of time on the grass. And he has lost right around 8 seconds to Vinogradov now. There was a pretty big battle. Well, not necessarily battle, but both of them were very close together, following them each other throughout these laps, these recent laps. But now that has definitely come to a close with now more than 8 seconds between the two. And Dambrauskis probably with some pretty dirty tires right now to take care of. But he does have one pit stop to go. So he does now have a chance to get off those tires already. Speaking of tires, back to Mullard. Mullard is in the pits now, so he has decided to pit as well. Right, and I was gonna say, he does have to make sure that he is on older tires than, well...
Everybody.
I can't find him anymore.
Who are we looking for? Oh, did we lose, No, we have Hudson.
Hudson, there he is. I was completely blind there. He is on older tires, or he was on older tires than Hudson on that last lap. So Hudson probably would have been able to make up just a little bit of time to Mullard, but there we go. Mullard already on the move again. Hudson still hasn't yet reached the final corner, so the gap may be bigger than I would have even expected.
Yeah, Mullard out of the pits. He's
now
done a very
hitting
good
the
job.
pit exit sign.
Yep, we got Dombrowski's and Michaels into the pits. serving their last pit stops. Vinogradov and Hearn still have to do that. So, and Partez as well. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where Mullard comes out in all of this. If they, ooh, we have an Aston Martin parked on the side. Is that? It's not Cuthbert. That's Niedzilski's.
A McLaren of Niedzilski.
Oh.
And just as he rejoins, he goes into Mullard, or either Mullard goes into him, whichever way you want to look at it. Luckily, it doesn't look like too much damage on Mullard's car, but it's definitely a little bit of visible damage on the front there, so that is not going to make him too happy. On the other hand, he has also lost just a tiny bit of time to Hudson, but the gap is still 4 seconds, and there's only 16 minutes to go for Mullard to hang on to the lead. But Hudson is definitely going to be able, or to try to push as much as he can right now, because those 4 seconds, if he puts in a mega final stint, those are definitely possible to make up.
Yep, we saw Vinogradov go into the pit lane, so he should have enough of a gap down to Mullard to maintain, but of course, you never know. Hussman also opting to go into the pit lane, so Partez as well. So Mullard has actually played this perfectly. He is going to inherit this P2, and the only driver ahead of him is going to be Hearn, who still has to pit. So Hearn has to be seeing this and is most likely going to be pushing and pushing and pushing.
I wonder how big the gap actually is between Hearn and Mullard. Okay, Hearn is coming into the second chicane right now, while Mullard is right now going through Island Bend. So there's actually quite a big gap between the two. Still, Mullard was in the lead for a lot of this race and hasn't really seemed to make any major mistakes so far. So I think there's a pretty good chance for Mullard to still be in the net lead, even with all the carnage that's been going on. Mullard has been sort of a bastion of stability, you could say. He's been putting in his laps. He's been doing that relatively standard pit stop strategy of basically cutting the race down into roughly 3 20-minute segments, and it's worked out for him. He hasn't run into any trouble. He hasn't made any major mistakes. He's just been putting in his solid pace, and might look like he's in a very good position to take the first win of the season.
Yeah, we still got a lot of work to do. Still 15 minutes to go here. Still 10 minutes left on that pit window. We still have a few drivers who have yet to put on fresh rubber. Hearn, your current race leader, being one of them. Fredrickson as well. Parfait. And I believe Bonnefoy as well. So on top of the 10-second penalty, that's going to be a little bit rough. But, you know, being in last, you don't really have to worry about it all too much. Oh, and there he goes way off, completely missing his break point. Has not been the start of the season for the Frenchman. But still 6 rounds to go after this. We look back here. Matty Sack has a nice Ferrari behind him. That is our friend Felgen, who has been doing everything he can to get back positions, and he does actually with the mistake from Sack. So an easy P11.
And for Bonnefoy, even if there's no real prospects of gaining any more positions from now on, he is staying out there. He is finishing his race. And what have you here? Oh, we've got a... Yeah, looks like we've got a collision between Sharp and Husman. Let's see if we can get a replay of that.
Yep. Oh.
I have to say if that was an intentional attempt at an overtake, or if Sharp just braked significantly later than Husman, but both of them losing out big time here. Husman now going very slow, trying to nurse his tires, nurse his damaged car. And I've completely forgotten what I was about to say.
Oh, the joys of broadcast. I think no, I think Sharp just maybe saw a gap there. The door closed at the literal last second. So I mean, that's going to be my 2 cents about it. I'm going to leave that one to the stewarding team. That's their job, not mine. But to me personally, it looked like just a gap that wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, he was coming in from quite far back there. But I know what I was talking about. I was talking about Bonnefoy. Despite being in last place, having some big troubles, some of them his own making, some of them absolutely not, with whatever technical issue he had going on while he was parked in the final corner. He is staying out there even if he doesn't have any real prospects of gaining any more points than he currently has in last place. He is gaining that experience, and especially at a track like this, even surviving out there is going to teach you lots of things, even if you're not racing with anyone. So he's taken away from this race as much as he can. And meanwhile, Hearn still out on the track. Only 12 minutes to go, still 1 pit stop to go. And he is bringing in some solid pace. But it looks like he might be tempted, and he is going into the pits right now. So there we go. One of the last stoppers, actually next to Bonfoy. Bonfoy is in the pits as well now. So now both of our final cars out on track are in the pits. And I'm very excited to see where Hearn comes out of the pits, because he was able to put in some solid pace. But he is only now stopped, and now is where his 30 seconds start, while Morad is already coming to the final corner. So I'm thinking it's pretty likely that Morad will come out ahead of him. But where exactly Hearn comes out in this P1 to P whatever battle, we'll see.
Yep, there goes Mullard.
Going past, while Hearn is still stationary.
Yep,
Got a penalty coming in. Right now, 5 seconds. Let's see if that grows any bigger. Seems like it's gonna stay at 5 seconds for the 140 of Ippolito. And Hearn is back out on track. Now Vinogradov has come through, but he might just be able to come out in front of Dambraukis, who has had that major off at Island Bend.
Looks like he has,
and
yeah.
There we go. Just over 2 seconds of gap between the two. Now, two very fast drivers, both able to put in some solid pace in this race. Hearn now has to be a little careful on that outlap, warming up his tires. While the Dambraukis is on warmed up tires, but also on slightly older tires. So once Hearn has warmed up his tires, he might have just a slight tire advantage. But we'll see how that works out. I think we might be seeing a little battle for P4 just towards the end of this race.
Definitely keep an eye
Meanwhile,
on
another penalty coming in for the 524. Let's see, that is Vining. That is Vining in the Honda once again, collecting a 10-second penalty for causing a collision. Right now up in P7 after all that has happened. A relatively good recovery, I gotta say. P7 after the big crash at the start of the race, after a few more crashes and incidents throughout the race. Let's see, is now... Okay, he's now 15 seconds ahead of Tully, of his closest chaser. So those 10 seconds are going to leave him where he is. In the front, there's 8 seconds to go until Michaels. So 8 seconds in 9 minutes. I know Vining has some solid pace in that Honda, but tough to make up those 8 seconds in just these 9 minutes. And then there would also have to be the 10 seconds of the penalty on top. So I think Vining, unless something drastic happens, is going to stay just where he is in P7.
Yeah, it's a monumental task, and the only way that it actually works out in his favor is if something terrible happens to Michaels. Obviously not going to say what exactly, because, I don't want to curse him, but it would definitely take some very, very rude cosmic intervention for that to happen, as Sletner is picking up a 10-second penalty. Just real quick shout out, by the way, to Wagner, who's giving us these penalties, because as far as I know, the bot is not working quite well. So to you, Wagner, thank you for making our jobs a little bit easier. Next round's on me.
All right, and unfortunately, we have finally lost the car. Have we? It looks like we have. I'm not seeing Bonfoy on the Delta anymore. So, no, there we go. I've just had a bug with the screen, so it wouldn't scroll. Bonfoy is still in the race. Just behind Nijelski, behind Perkins, behind Sletner. So that 10-second penalty, I'm not sure if that's going to lose him any positions. Let's quickly check. There we go. Oh, he's actually chasing McConnell in P22, but that 10-second penalty is going to, throw a spanner in the works. But he's not going to lose any positions. No cars within 10 seconds of him.
No, so that's a good thing for him.
As he misses his braking point for the second chicane, goes a little deep on the exit again. Surely not an easy car to drive right now with that damage on the back of that McLaren.
No, definitely not.
And also probably a bit of yeah, exhaustion coming in at the end of a 60-minute race around Oulton Park. It is an exhausting track. It's one where you have to be on top of your game for every single lap.
It really is.
A few of those tracks in ACC, and all of them are completely unique and, well, completely beautiful in their own right.
Yeah, even when you're hot lapping and you're just practicing, you're experimenting with lines, it feels like you can't even blink half the time because you're gonna lose like that little bit of road you were looking at. I found myself when I was practicing this back when it first dropped, I was like, if I'm not 100%, like if I look away from the screen for even a split second, might as well abort the lap because hey, I'm gonna mess something up. So despite Oulton being a track that on the surface might seem relatively easy, it is extremely punishing.
Does it seem easy? I'm not sure.
I mean, if you think about the perfect line in your head and you imagine yourself driving it without actually driving it, yeah, it seems really easy. But when you actually do it, you're like, oh no, this is definitely a problem. And speaking of problems, Cuthbert right now is going way out wide, and that is going to let Fredrickson through free of charge. Fredrickson was doing a very good job of actually chasing down the Scott, but just a little bit too much even when he needs to get around. So even as this race tapers away and dies down, we're still getting mistakes from these drivers.
I'll tell you what, we might have had a little incident or a little mistake or something for Mullard, because the gap that used to be around 4 seconds to Hudson has now come down to just over 1 second. 6 minutes to go, plenty of time for that 1 second gap to come down even more, and for Hudson to slip into slipstream range and perhaps get the chance to go for the overtake for a race win. So things are absolutely not done out there in the lead.
No, the last lap for Hudson was only 15 thousandths slower than Mullard. And of course, with this little incident, or little whatever had happened to Mullard earlier, is definitely going to have a bit of a hit onto his lap time, but obviously not indicative of what he is running exactly. But it looks like, despite the little scoring pylon not updating right away, I believe the gap is going to go up a tenth or so. No, it's actually fallen, so it's a second. Mullard a 33.85, then a 33.42 for Hudson, again with that little bit of an off. It shouldn't be too indicative, but of course we still have some time left here on the clock. The pit window has closed. Thankfully, all of these drivers have pitted. But with these little red boxes you see, it's going to possibly move some people around and make things a little bit difficult. But I think right now we want to be up front here because this is potentially going to come down to the wire.
You can see Hudson is throwing in absolutely everything he has because this is his chance. I mean, even if he already has shown what he can do out in this first lap, it would be an even bigger accomplishment to win on your debut. And he is smelling that chance, and that chance is real. The gap has now come down to only 7 tenths right now, after we come out of the second chicane.
Yeah, it looks
so
like
Mullard is going to have to start sweating and make sure no more mistakes are made. And he is a little in the disadvantage with that little bit of front damage he has taken from an earlier little collision with a spinning back marker. There we go, 5 tenths now. 5 tenths is the gap. I think there might not even have been a mistake from Mullard over the course of these last few laps. It looks like Hudson is just putting on the pace. 33.1 now. That's a new personal best for him.
Yep.
Let me quickly check how far that is off.
Mullard
that is only
33.66, so half a second, and there's going to be, I think, what, 2 more laps after this. So, and then we'll be on final. So there's still a long way to go for Mullard. It's going to seem like an eternity, especially as it looks like we're starting to come up on a bit of traffic. This is exactly what Hudson is going to be waiting for.
And Hudson is on fire. He has just set his personal fastest lap of the race, less than 2 tenths off of the absolute fastest lap of the race of Vining. And if we think about the gap in qualifying of Vining being more than half a second off of even P2 in qualifying, and now his fastest lap being less than 2 tenths faster than Hudson's fastest lap, who was that definitely not in the top 3 in qualifying. Hudson has absolutely thrown everything at the wall in this race so far, and he is now only 4 tenths behind Mullard as we come out of the second chicane.
Yep.
And now, Heffitz is out there, having to make sure to give the 2 chasers space in a proper way. There we go. Perfect space for that, to let the 2 pass. And now the gap is down to 2 tenths between them, so this could get very spicy these final few laps.
I was gonna say, I think Mullard got held up a little bit from Buffett. So there is gonna be another lap, and then we're going on to final. The last lap for Mullard, a 34.1 and then a 34.0 for Hudson. Both of them having to deal with some back marker traffic, but now they've got some clean air to work with. Mullard holding on for dear life for this P1. It's so close, but there's still so much more to go here. Hudson, like you said earlier, Simon, it's his debut race. He wants to get a win already. A podium would be incredibly impressive, but he wants to go for gold here, and he's still got some time to do it, but he is not closing up as fast as he was not too long ago.
No, the first half of this lap has not gone his way. Definitely, it looks overall like Mullard is getting better first sectors, and Hudson has made a little mistake coming out of the hairpin. But in these 2 chicanes in the middle sector, or the second half of the lap, that's where Hudson has the advantage, and now it's closing up already again. But he has to close up more than that. Overtaking in the Oulton Park is not an easy feat. You basically need the car in front to make a mistake, or you have to be significantly faster. And while Hudson has brought more pace to the table in these last few laps, it's not been a huge amount to you know, warrant an overtake at Oulton Park of all places. And there we go. We've got more blue flags coming into the mix now of Nijelski and Sletner. But those two are not actually involved in their own battle, so those 2 should be able to let the cars behind pass without too much issue. Of course, Sletner got a little sketchy out of the first corner.
Oh, hold on. This is throwing a wrench into the works. Hudson's caught right up. This is, I believe, is that Cuthbert getting out of the way? I'm not quite certain. Or no, it's Sletner. Or Sletner was one of them. Jeski, yeah. So now we're on to final lap, and wouldn't you know it, Hudson, he's closer than he has been in quite a long time, just a couple of tenths, so he's got to make something work. There is a yellow flag out, but not quite sure what that's for. Hudson giving it his all right now. He is just pushing that Mercedes to the limit. Mullard, everything he's got in the tank, everything he's got in those tires, trying to hold back the number 22 from getting a win here. But there is still just a few corners to go, and this is definitely enough for Slipstream. Hudson looking for a bit of a straighter exit, and it hasn't worked out. Mullard's starting to pull away just by a little bit.
Only one realistic chance for Hudson to go, and that is the final corner, which is actually not a bad overtaking position at all, but Hudson goes wide into the penultimate corner.
He does, and it looks
sends
like
Mullard 7 tenths away, and that is the race, the race lead, or the race victory decided.
Done and dusted. Ben Mullard.
Final corner is done.
Yep, around they go, flashing the headlights, and across the line, Mullard making it onto the top step of the podium. Hudson, a very, very solid debut race, makes it onto the podium as well. And Eugene Vinogradov, a late joiner last season, picks up that final podium position. P3 for him. Daniel Hearn out of the final corner. He's on home soil, and he's going to make it P4. And then it is Dembrowski's, a new joiner from Lithuania, that top 5. A very, very solid job from him. Michaels comes across in P6, Vining P7 with that 10-second penalty. Will not have any effect as Tully is quite a long ways back for P number 8. And then it is Partez who has swapped into the boat this season, if memory serves. And then Matty Sack is gonna make it a P10 finish for him. What a very good job from all these drivers, especially some of these new names.
Absolutely, and there we go. That's almost all the cars on the lead lap done. Sack still on the lead lap. Felgen After all this happened to him, come back to P11, not a bad finish at all.
No, it's
Although I'm sure he's not going to be happy with that. Same goes for Vining. Fastest lap, but P7 is not what he was aiming for. And there we go. There's Kearns finishing P12, rounding out the final car that finishes on the lead lap. And on the final lap, we've had the biggest penalty, let me tell you, of the entire race. We've got an SG10 for Zinnecker.
Oh, goodness.
Which was converted into, I believe, he already had a 5-second penalty, and it was converted into a 40-second penalty, as he couldn't serve that on the final lap. So he's going to be, not sure, yeah, there we go. He's moved down from P13 to P18 because of that.
Yeah, it's incredibly rough. So driver's still just going around the track again, you know, final little victory laps. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a look at the standings. So in the GT3 category overall, it's going to be Mullard, Hudson, Vinogradov, your top three, and Pro-Am. Dombrowski's, Tully, and Partez. Amateur class, Fredrickson with the bragging rights there, especially after a top 10 finish for him. And then the Zenaker brothers of Andreas and Lucas, 2 and 3 for them. The drivers who have yet to get rated, Chop and Niedzelski, 1 and 2. And then, of course, nobody in Nationals because, well, the only National car is a GT4, and that's our lovely Chevy Camaro GT4 safety car sponsored by Simrigs. But Simon, what an explosive start we've already had to EU. I'm ready to see what these guys have to offer.
Well, I'm gonna have to say that was. It's a good thing this race didn't happen at the beginning of the last season, because I would not have been prepared for that. That was definitely the most exciting race I've commentated on so far. That was the absolute chaos from start to finish. We even had the two biggest championship contenders from the last season, both taken out on the first lap, or both sent somewhere towards the back. And we've had a battle on the final lap. We've had so many crashes, we've had so many spins, we've had so many big overtakes, so many big penalties. This race was, goddamn, that was everything that could possibly have happened in the opening lap, opening rounds of the season. So I am very pleased with this one.
Yeah, and on a track that's just so difficult to overtake on, and it's very, very narrow. I mean, we saw pretty much everything this track had to offer. But a very, very good start to the season. I'm ready to see what's going to happen next week at Spa. But ladies and gentlemen, for us here in the studio, we've got to close out this stream. I will be back later here on the same channel later tonight for the North American split race. We'll see what my boys here on this side of the Atlantic have to offer. But of course, on behalf of myself, Simon Bauer, and everybody here at the OOR, we'd like to thank you so much for stopping by and your support. And of course, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Simrigs, for sponsoring this season 11 of the Sprint Series. Patreon members, you get that 5% discount in the store. And if I were you, I would definitely take advantage of that. But next week, we'll be back at Spa-Francorchamps, a track that everybody has played on and everyone has opinions about. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, as always, stay safe, stay beautiful, and we'll see you next time.